other cases that this cop was involved with were thrown out. I just don't understand why Meeks isn't and why he isn't released yet. And, you know, you got to take some good with the bad. And I think the good with this situation is that he now has a platform. And I think coming out, he'll be able to use that platform to really shine a light on how corrupt this system is, man. And hopefully keep this younger generation from going through this. And there's also a lot of people that are incarcerated now that are doing unnecessary time. You know, I'm not saying that everybody that's in jail shouldn't be in jail. I think that there's definitely some bad in there, same with there's some good. But, you know, when you have these probation violations that are turning into 4 to 8 year sentences, I think that should be reviewed. I think it should be looked at. And I think that we need to find a level of fair in the system. And, you know, it takes certain situations to shine a light on it. This is a situation for me that did that. And I'll use my voice, I'll use my platform to hopefully bring better.
Of having to deal with what is unspoken by the subjugated, what is never said to the master. Of ever having to deal with this reality was a very remote possibility. It was in no one's mind. When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those were the only books there were. Everyone else seemed to agree. If you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem, downtown, the world agrees. What you see is much bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are. They collect the garbage. People obviously can pay their life insurance. The children look happy. Say, you're not. And you go back home. And it would seem then, of course, that it's an act of God, that this is true, that you belong where white people have put you. That image not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world, and the Africans had to be dealt with in a way they'd never been dealt with before. This gave an American Negro for the first time a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown. It has created, and will create, a great many conundrums. One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. One has used the myth of Negro and the myth of color to pretend and to assume that you are dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, that is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers, liars. We are human too. What is crucial here, unless we can manage to establish some kind of dialogue between those people whom I pretend have paid for the American dream, and those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble.
Let's get down hand. Arrest that boy. These warrants are legal. They've not been signed.
Sign them now. For God's sake, they're just a bunch of blacks.
What are the charges? There's no law against free men withholding their labor in this country. If white men can strike, why can't blacks?
Release the prisoners.
Our destruction. The African black was a harmless, docile
creature that could be kept in the place that God and the Bible had assigned him. But the liberal Yankee and the lecherous Jew have inbred with the animal to create a new and impure race that think of themselves our equal. They take food out of your mouth. They take the land from our people. They're going to take our women. I'm not afraid to die in defense of my country and my way of life. I'm not afraid to kill for my way of life. It is my sacred duty to God. It is my sacred duty to God. It is my sacred duty to God. Say it. Duty to God. Say it. Say it. It's my sacred duty to God. It's my sacred duty to God. Say it. Let the nigger burn in hell.
Military rule by Israel, and then there's the Gaza Strip, which is like the open-air prison, which they bomb the shit out of like every couple of years, and Hamas controls that area. And then there's Jerusalem, which is an international city center that both Arabs and Jews live in. But the West Bank has been occupied militarily since 1967, and it's complete martial law. There's checkpoints. All political parties are illegal. You can't... Having a gun is like the least of it. You can't hold a flag. You can't belong to a political party. You literally can't do shit if you're a Palestinian. You just have to sit there and submit. And even if you share a photo of someone who was like killed by an Israeli soldier, you go to jail. And you go to jail for the amount of like months that...
What?
Yeah. Based on the shares and likes of the photo, they'll penalize you more and put you in prison for longer and longer. I mean, I'll just tell you one story.
If you put a photo on social media, like you
of
put someone
someone
on
who
Facebook,
died, and they'll be like, "You're sharing a martyr and inciting people to like commit suicide, like on behalf of Palestinians. You go to jail," and they put them in jail. There's 99.7% conviction rate. Kids are tortured. Kids are in prison. It is absolutely insane. We went to the first day that we were there. We went to a funeral of some guy, some farmer who was shot by Israeli forces, and we went to the funeral. It was horrible. You know, all the women are wailing and crying, and as we're leaving, the Israeli forces had set up a checkpoint right outside of this dude's house and started tear gassing and shooting rubber bullets like at people who were simply attending the funeral. People are confused about like Bannon and this anti-Semitism thing. Look, you can hate Jews and love Israel. Just like Richard Spencer. This is a perfect example. Richard Spencer sees Israel as the perfect example of what he wants the U.S. to be. Because it's a, ethno-supremacist nationalist state. And that's what these people love. So you can be anti-Semitic and still love the notion of fostering like a certain group, a certain identity.
So does he think we should have mandatory military service the way they do?
Well, he definitely doesn't want different races breeding, so I think that he probably just wants like an insular society of all just like white people.
Jesus Christ.
Nazism, bro.
When you get a bunch of people and everybody has to join the army,
very disturbing.
There's a bond that they have. It's very different than a regular civilian bond. And the indoctrination that you get once you've been in the military and you fought side by side with your brothers and sisters in arms, it's a totally different feeling. I know a lot of people that have been in the military, and some of them got deeper in it than others. And like those people, like it's almost like an us versus them. There's society that they're, like that's that whole Chris Kyle sheepdog thing,
right?
They're protecting us.
State, and there really was no support until the Holocaust, where they were able to sell the fear more. And there was even false flag attacks where Zionist organizations were going around different Arab countries and committing terrorism, and then saying all right, the Jews need to come and escape. You guys are being persecuted. Like they would actually carry out terrorism at synagogues and stuff. And this is all documented. Yeah. But the ethnic cleansing that went on, I mean, it's horrific. There's dozens of massacres that happened in the formation of Israel. Because even though it was partitioned initially by the UN, I don't know who gave this international body the authority to partition a country on top of another country, but on top of that, there was several massacres that just continued to take more and more of the land, as I said, and that was called the Nakba. And so all these people were expelled violently and purged from their land. And we visited some of these refugee camps, and the people were just we literally, our houses are 5 miles away, and we're just stuck in these camps, and we've been here for 50 years.
Or about how you further tighten the financial pressure on Iran in particular, if it also means economic pain for a lot of our allies.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. One of the problems, not specifically on this issue, just in general, that
word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news.
What do you care about them? What do you care about those people? What difference does it make to you? Take care of your own life. Do the best you can for you and your family. What do the rest of the people mean to you? They don't mean anything to you. They're just serfs. They're just people. You know, it was just a lack of caring. You know, and that's just not who I was. It was just sort of like cold, you know, it was just like cold, you know, and I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need, you have all the power you need, what's the point? You know, what's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the bankers, the elite people, you know, the bankers and some government controlling the world. And I said, do all the people in the Council on Foreign Relations believe this way you do? He said, no. You know, most of them believe they're doing the right thing. A lot of them believe it's better off being socialistic. You know, we have to convince people that socialism is really capitalism. This America's becoming a socialist country. It's a communist country today. Well, one of the things they told me was that we were at the house one night, and we were talking, and he started laughing. He said, Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about? And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. And I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote. You know? And he started to laugh and said, you're an idiot. And I said, why am I an idiot? He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded women's lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all of the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He said, there were two primary reasons. And one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before women's lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. So it breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them.